Hey, Joe Brunsman here, cyber insurance broker to the stars, back with another video for you on a very common question I'm getting. I've actually gotten this question 3 times in the last 2 weeks, and that's whether MSPs should be reselling cyber insurance. Now, obviously, I'm coming from a biased position on this. I'm going to try and be as unbiased as possible for whatever that means. I do actually, sell cyber insurance. I work with MSPs, both providing their Tech E&O and providing cyber insurance to their clients to try and keep everybody out of trouble. So I already know I'm going to get flamed on for this video, but I wanted to provide kind of some additional insights, at least things I think MSP should know about before they start going down this path. All right, foremost is you're going from a relatively unregulated environment to perhaps the single most regulated environment and industry in the entire world. I mean, there are literally thousands of laws that deal with this. Moreover, every single state actually controls their own particular insurance laws. So you're going from something that's, relatively you can do what you want to an industry that has a fairly bad reputation, I would argue for warranted reasons in many respects, and it is highly, highly regulated. So the first thing you'd want to think about is, hey, do you need an insurance license to do this? If you do, what type of insurance license are you going to need? Once again, it depends upon the state in where you're at and what type of policy is actually being sold here. Then you got to think about, okay, which states are you going to need those licenses in? Now you have to think about what are those licensing requirements if a license is required. So obviously you have to take a test, which isn't particularly onerous, but it's just another thing to do. And on top of that, there are CPE requirements to maintain your license in those states. Those various states all have different times of the year and different periodicities in which those licenses renew, all of which actually cost money, unfortunately. Next is going to be, are you incurring any additional legal liability? Or to put it another way, who could blame you for this, right? Let's say you're a reseller of cyber insurance and that cyber insurance declines to pay out on some claim. Well, are they now going to come looking for you? That kind of actually sort of defeats the purpose, actually. Next is this a covered loss? So let's say somebody does sue you because you were a reseller, so to speak, of cyber insurance, and they sue you. Is that actually a covered loss under your own insurance policies? Well, probably not, actually. There are very specific E&O / malpractice / professional liability, all synonymous terms, for insurance agents and insurance brokers. So that's something you need to be aware of there. If you are going to go down this path, there's a possibility you may actually need an additional E&O policy. The next thing to think about is you could have a concentration of a loss position. So what does that really mean? That means that essentially you're defeating the purpose, right? When we're saying, hey, when I say I am saying, hey, yeah, your clients need to have cyber insurance. Why is that? Because now you're pushing that loss off on multiple different insurers that are all specific to that particular business or type of loss, right? With this, it appears that it's all just going to be going through one central insurer. So now you could have all of your clients simultaneously denied coverage or taking a much closer look at denying coverage, because instead of saying, insurer A paying, $250,000 here, insurer B paying $350,000 here, and insurer C paying $500,000 here, it's insurer A is paying all those losses, those all add up. And once those millions start racking up, obviously that insurance company is going to be paying very particular attention to that. And then you'd also have to be worried about subrogation of rights. So what does that really mean? Subrogation of rights means that the insurance company has the right to actually sue, right, whoever they believe that offending party was, essentially like on behalf of, in the name of the party that was harmed for that loss. So for example, an insurance company ends up, they have to pay out, say, $1 million on a particular claim, right, for one of your clients. And then they turn around and they're going to sue you to try and recoup that $1 million loss. Now, if it's spread amongst different carriers, the probability of subrogation of any one insurance carrier coming after you is probably pretty low. But once that's a concentrated position, it's definitely, much more feasible that an insurance company would then say, okay, well, if this was, $100,000 loss, okay, that's just what it is. It's not worth to fight it. If this is a multi-million-dollar loss, they very well could come after you for your own E&O policy. So almost, really just kind of defeating the loss of what you're trying to get at there. The next thing you have to think about is, is this multiple types of policies? Is this just one type of cyber insurance policy? As I've said many times before, there's technically no such thing as cyber insurance. It's not a legal term. It's not an insurance industry term. It's just this idea that society has placed upon the idea that if something goes wrong dealing with technology or through the interwebs, that this type of insurance would pay out. So you really have to be particular about this. You need to understand and read through all the policy language. Make sure you have a really good handle on that. Make sure you understand those coverage features, right? Also understand what else is out in the market and if there's different types of policies that would actually be more optimal for that particular client. Because the last thing you want is, hey, they bought cyber insurance and it didn't actually cover the losses that they needed, right? Those particular requirements, depending really specifically on that exact business. And now you have a whole nother problem actually on your hands there. Next thing you need to be aware of is the actual policy structure. So what are the sublimits of that policy? What are the particular deductible and retention provisions inside of that? What are the subrogation provisions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Is it a single limit policy? Is it a multiple limit policy? Are there aggregate limits? Is it, per claim limits or the per claim and aggregate limits? How does that all play out? If you're going to do this, make sure you have a handle on that. Right? Could branch out from there. If you really once you kind of start digging into this, if you're like, okay, well, maybe this one type of policy that I could resell isn't sufficient. We need to look at other types of policies depending upon the specific needs of our clients on an individual basis. Yeah, you could branch out from there. From there, essentially, you'd need to really be like your own insurance brokerage. You'd have to start up like a separate business. And then you're going to have to either contract specifically with different insurance companies, which could limit you because now they're going to have minimum premium guarantees. So they're going to want at least a certain amount, generally about $250,000 in premiums. That's pretty hard to do unless you're a very large MSP, because most cyber insurance policies are very, very affordable. So, $1 million business could easily get a cyber policy for under $1,200. And then from there, you have to think of all that work you put in. Well, you're not really getting a lot of commission actually in return for that. So let's say you're the only broker in your MSP / new cyber insurance brokerage type business, right? Well, just off the top, let's say you're going to get, say, 12.5% of commission. So 12.5% on a $1,000 policy, not a lot there when you start factoring in all the other costs of a separate possible insurance policy, dealing with the licensing requirements, et cetera, et cetera. That is why insurance is a volume business, and there are very, very few new insurance brokerages actually being created out there because it just takes a long time to trudge through to actually become profitable there. Next thing you need to think about is, how are you actually getting paid for this? I've heard kind of different schemes going on here, but the various states, all have different rules on how you can actually get paid, right? If you're like a reseller, generally that's really frowned upon. Even referral fees are generally frowned upon, if not outright illegal. Once again, you're going from a highly unregulated industry to a very, very regulated industry where there's a long history of people doing very, very stupid, immoral things. So they have put in tons of laws to try and lock that down. So you really, really have to be careful there. All right, could be illegal. We talked about that. And, kind of at the end of the day, the small increase in revenue, probably not going to be worth the risks and the pain here. Final thoughts, right? If you put the shoe on the other foot, would you, I guess you don't know me, but I do have a technology background, but would you trust me, right? If I was like going out to my clients and I'm like, hey, I have this new, backup, right? Cloud backup solution that I can store for it. You'd probably be like, that's preposterous. You're an insurance guy. Like, what do you know about technology? Think about the risks versus the rewards there, right? I'm not saying that you shouldn't do this. I'm not saying that you can't do this. What I'm trying to be is balanced here and say, all right, if you're going to go in, if you're going to do this, right, this is kind of like an all or nothing. If you really are going to jump into this, here's some reading material for you, really kind of to get you started that really helped me when I first started. So insurance law in a nutshell, that's really kind of a good start for you. Understanding Insurance Law by Jerry and Richmond. This is a phenomenal book. Highly recommend that you get this one. Next thing is, if you're going to be jumping into the cyber insurance world, obviously you can download my book for free. The other thing you kind of want to think about is this actual book right here, U.S. Privacy Law. That's a good place to start, just to kind of understand the legal system in general, which I think is very beneficial for guys. First book is going to be Law 101. That is going to be really kind of give you the broad structure to understand how this works. And then when it comes to really kind of the finer details, administrative practice and procedures, this is a hefty book, but also really, really quite good. And that could assist you there as well. So if you're going to jump into it, right, really think about this as an all or nothing, because I think the risks are really high for an MSP to do this. And you'd really have to know what you're doing to do it effectively. That's actually one of the reasons, kind of like as a tangent here, I've had people ask me like, hey, can you work on my business owner's policy? And I always tell them no, right? What I focus in is that E&O professional liability sphere, cyber insurance, employment practices, right? And some excess insurance, but that's kind of a subsect of the other ones. I do that specifically, right? Even though I'm technically licensed to sell business owners insurance, like I could make that happen. I just have no value to add there, right? I know enough to be dangerous. I know enough to assist people if I see something that's like really crazy, but I don't know enough to really get down into the nuts and bolts like I can with those other types of insurance that I really specialize in. So, maybe that's something that you could kind of take to heart there. That's something that I do not do business owners policies because there's too much risk for me to actually do that. All right, moving forward. Yes, your clients do need cyber insurance. Yes, you can actually contractually require your clients to have it. Speak to your attorney about that. If you need a referral to an attorney, I can assist you there. It's also good for your own liability, right? You want to spread that risk to the cyber insurance carriers appropriately as opposed to on your own E&O policy. And if you're, when you're going to do that, just find a knowledgeable insurance broker, right? Yes, I do team up with MSPs to write their own insurance and the cyber insurance for their own clients. You don't necessarily have to use me. That's totally fine. But do your due diligence there and at least find a knowledgeable insurance broker. There's not that many out there. Generally, the general insurance guy, with the State Farm office down the street, that's not going to cut it for you. You really, really need to find a specialist in this. It is quite complicated. And, just stick with that handoff approach, right? It's, hey, you should talk to this guy about cyber insurance, right? And then from there, it goes on to the potential liability of that insurance broker to make sure he's doing the right thing, not that you have done all of this requisite background material and you have all this knowledge to make the appropriate decision for your clients. All right, with that, if you enjoyed this presentation, this is where you can actually go to download a free copy of my book, Cyber Insurance and Compliance. Got a ton of laws in there. All the big ones, you can use that. Highly recommended when you're speaking with your clients. Make sure they're staying out of trouble. You can also, if you'd like to, get a physical or Kindle version on Amazon. And with that, tell your friends, like, comment, subscribe. I already know I'm going to get flamed in the comment section, but I'm just trying to help you guys out. And with that, stay safe.